Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me is Pete Bommarito, founder of Bommarito Performance Systems, to discuss the economics of a top NFL combine training facility. Pete, it's great to meet with you. Welcome to Trade Talks.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, Pete, there's three things I love about football: the Super Bowl, obviously, my auction for fantasy football, and the combine. I love watching the combine. It's one of my favorite things all year. Explain to the audience what the NFL combine is.
I mean, it's a 5-day event in Indianapolis every year where they go through a rigorous form of medical examinations, biomechanical examinations, interviews, and then they have the performance testing. So what the fans usually see is the day 5, which is the performance day. That's where you're going to have your drills in speed, which is acceleration, the 40-yard dash, basically, up to, acceleration up into the continued acceleration for the 40. But they also time the 10, the 20, the 30, the 40, or within the 40. They have different agility drills like the Pro Shuttle, the 3-cone. They have power drills, which is the broad jump and the vertical jump for horizontal, vertical power. Then they have position drills. Sometimes some positions will have a 60-yard shuttle, which is kind of like a conditioning drill. And then they have position drills. So like, wide receivers will run the wide receiver route tree, for example. That's going to be on the performance day. They also have the 225 bench press, which is a measure of upper body strength endurance, which is usually done the day before the run day on day 4. But the real big meat part of the combine is usually the medical exams and the interviews, which is done the first 3 to 4 days. That's the stuff that obviously cannot be televised. They might discuss it here and there, but that's the main benefit of the combine to the teams, is those medical exams and the interviews. And then obviously a good measuring stick of just athleticism, how it transfers, is the performance day, which is the exciting part for the fans, especially the speed drills.
Yeah, definitely. I love the high jump in the 40. So Pete, what kind of work goes into training these elite athletes? When did they start training, and who are some NFL pros that you've worked with?
This is an interesting year. It started in August, basically. We had a series of players that decided they were going to opt out from the season because of COVID, and they started training with us immediately. So there's been guys that have been with us the entire time. Typically it starts after the college football season ends, but we got a handful of guys in August, a couple in September. Some of them played a season, got to a point where they kind of had enough, opted out, and came with us in October, November. So it's an interesting year this year. This is not a normal year, obviously, by any stretch of the means. So the definitive start date's hard to pin down because guys started from August all the way up until last week. Actually, I had another guy start yesterday. I have another guy starting on Monday. So I'd say on average, it's the month of January and February is the draft prep training. The number of pros I've trained is extensive. And again, interesting thing is we train a lot of guys for the NFL Combine, the NFL Draft, but a lot of them come back to us. A lot of the star players that I've worked with, I met through NFL draft prep training. Even like Frank Gore, which is one of my first clients after I broke off from a big company, went off on my own. He was actually my first client when I started my own company. I trained Frank Gore for the combine, and he's been with me literally every year since for his entire career. All the way up into, Stephon Diggs that had a monster year, but I've been working with him since he came out of Maryland in 2015, or Chris Jones, which is like a premier defensive tackle in the league. I met him through draft prep training in 2016, and he's been with me every single year of his career. So a lot, if you look at my website with our alumni list, I met a lot of these guys through draft prep training. So it's a good pipeline for me to kind of demonstrate what we're all about and what I can get done for them, and how I can not just help them, run a fast 40 or anything, but how can we help them stay healthy and help them become better football players. And I think that's the reason why a lot of them come back is because we offer kind of the full service program.
And it's interesting because my next question was going to be, what's the process from start to finish? But it sounds like there really is no finish as they continue to work with you throughout their careers. How do you identify an athlete? Do they come to you, or is it like a scouting process? How does that work?
Well, we recruit hard. Instagram is the best thing that ever happened to a guy like me. Let's put it that way. Social media is phenomenal. In the old days, we would sell the NFL agents because, the NFL agents will sign a player, and then it's kind of customary that part of them signing a player is they will fund the training at a place like mine. And there's very few places. So in the old days, it was just the trainers like me competing against each other for the agents. And we still do that. There's definitely agents that have their favorite spots. But now we not only go after the agents, we go directly after the players. So I've got my board that I put together. I mean, some of it is internet based, but a lot of it's just friends of mine in the league. So um, when you go on the internet, you can at least get the basics in terms of who's a draftable player, who's at least projected to possibly be in the top 100. But I have a lot of friends I've accumulated over the years that are scouts in the league, and I just kind of ask them, like, who's the under the radar guys I need to go after? Who's the small school guys? That stuff is gold. And so we go out, we kind of set our board in terms of the players we're going to recruit, and we recruit hard and hope that, sometimes the stars align where the player we're recruiting signs with an agent that wants to send this business. But there's so many agents out there, it's not like we know them all. So many times we'll get a player by just directly recruiting them. They decide they're going to train with us. They talk to the agent they sign with that may or may not have done business with us in the past, and kind of jumpstart the relationship that way. So it's a combination of things. I think the agents, the players, and the scouts that we know.
Yeah, it's just such an interesting ecosystem when you think about the economics of the combine. Is we know, sports is a big business, especially the NFL, arguably, one of the largest. So how has what does a typical year look like, and how has COVID-19 impacted that?
I mean, I'm based in South Florida, so not much, obviously. I mean, we're open. We've been open since May 1st. I mean, I think the biggest thing about COVID is just the volume of staff that I have around to just constantly keep things spread out, keep everybody spread out, keep everything sanitized. I mean, like the weight room, for example, we used to just go to the weight room and lift. Now we have to spread it all out. So like it's not like we can have too many guys in the weight room at the same time. They're all spaced 6 feet apart. We open up all the doors, all the windows, get the big fans going. This is South Florida. It's like 90 degrees here. So it's not like it's difficult for us to just open up the doors. And all these gyms in South Florida, like mine, are warehouse gyms. So when you open a door, like the whole wall comes up. I mean, that's a typical warehouse door. So we can get the circulation going. And we just have to have staff there constantly. We got the Jaws spray, which is the anti-COVID, one of the disinfectants on the list, where they're just, every time somebody uses something, we spray it down. Guys can't share equipment. So, we have to, if you're using 100-pound dumbbells, they're yours until you rack them. As soon as you rack them, we disinfect and go on. Just little things like that is the main things we've been dealing with COVID. And we have to wear a mask at all times, except for when you're actively training. So if you're running on the field or actively lifting in the weight room, you have the option to take the mask off. But other than that, it's just a mask rule, and other things like that, like lunch, like we just moved all of our lunch outside. So we have a lunchroom we're not even using. We have all these private massage rooms and things we're not using. We just literally brought tents and massage tables out on the field and just spread everything out, opened it up. So really, it's just, and it's kind of, it didn't really matter too much, except for because I live in Florida and it's 90 degrees here every day, we can just do everything outside. So that's really the only difference. And then in terms of the economics, which is I think where you're going with this, the biggest difference was we used to get a lot of these borderline draftable guys, and I make my living off those guys. A lot of those guys might not even be a combine invite, but they're a draftable player, still train with us. A big chunk of those types of players that are on the borderline draftable grade decided to take that COVID year and go back to school. So that was the only difference really, is we love those borderline guys. I'm going to get publicity. I'll get my first round picks and things like that, but I like being successful at both ends of the draft, where we take a 4th round pick, move into a 1st round pick. That's great. We also take some guys not even at the combine, no combine invite at all, that has a free agent grade, and move them up into the draft. I like kind of going both ends. So there's just fewer players at that borderline draftable grade. We still got some, but a lot of the ones that we were recruiting that decided they were going to train with us, that we were positive were going to come out because they had a draftable grade, decided to go back to school and take a COVID year. That's the only other difference that we're seeing this year.
Well, we've also saw some later round draft picks that have turned out to be absolute rock stars. So yeah, exactly. Certainly serious. I mean, look at the Super Bowl winner this year.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's good for us with regards to the economics. You're always going to look at what the agent wants to invest. A great prime example is a Chris Lindstrom. Chris Lindstrom, I think, came into the process on everybody's board as a 4th round pick, possibly a 3. And, he had one of the most dominating offensive line workouts I've ever seen, one of the most athletic offensive linemen I've ever trained. He actually set the record, the all-time record for the fastest offensive guard in NFL history. And I know the 40-yard dash doesn't mean as much an offensive lineman as it does a receiver, but when you're that ridiculously athletic, people are not going to ignore it. And you just saw the momentum carry after that combine performance and how he dominated the Senior Bowl. And next thing you know, there was chat about, hey, he might be a first-round pick, and it just kept going and going and going. Next thing you know, he's the 14th overall pick. So if you look at what a player is going to make from a 4th round to the 14th overall pick, plus what the agent's going to make off that contract, it makes a lot of sense for agents to want to invest and maximize your performance with a specialist like me, because if you do everything right, look how much more money we can all make. You know, that's the economic value of what we bring to the table, what we try to instill with the agents and players is you can significantly move up the draft boards with a dominating performance. There's no question.
All right, Pete, appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks, and thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.
All right, thank you very much.